Starliner Media. Starliner Media presents Music Night at the Majestic with your host, Michael Boswell.
All right, everybody, it's time once again for Music Night at the Majestic, and with us tonight, Sergio Lara. Sergio, welcome back to the show.
Hey, Michael, how are you? Thanks for having me.
Oh, it's great that we finally got to do this. We've been trying to coordinate you being on the show for quite a while now.
That's right.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you, I've got to tell the viewers, listeners, how you and I came to talk. And if you remember, I had received a trade magazine that had Higher Octave Records, had put a copy of Riverwalk, in there's a promotional thing. And that was, so it came in the magazine. I thought, well, that's actually this one right here.
That's right.
And I thought, well, that looks interesting. So I put it in, and that was 1998. And since then, it's become one of my favorite albums. If I'm in the car going for a drive, that's always one of the things on the playlist. So it's through that, got a hold of you. We ended up talking, and now we talk all the time.
Yeah, glad to hear that. Yeah, that was our fourth album for Higher Octave. And at that point, we had, we had toured a lot for the previous record, which was Exotico. And so that particular album, the material on Riverwalk was pretty much material that we were already performing, live, most of it. And in addition to, to having, a lot of new stuff that we were planning to record. So yeah, those were really good times, great times for that. I remember those sessions. It was a very productive, period in our career.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you what, before we get too far into that record, as I always say, every musician's journey starts somewhere. So where did yours begin?
Well, I started with being very interested in music from a very early age. And not necessarily the guitar, but everything, in fact, probably my first instrument was a drum kit. And or maybe just a little toy guitar or something. But I was also always very interested because my family was not musical at all or anything, but I knew that I wanted to play. And my mother was, I'm gonna find you a guitar teacher. I want to find you a guitar instructor. Basically. And I was 9 years old. So when I got my first guitar, I took it, it was my favorite toy. I took it to bed that night. I was just so happy to have it, and also very intrigued by it. Intrigued by the actual guitar, the construction, the strings, the smell of the woods, and so basically that was it. I was also very interested in putting something together with some of my classmates, from high school or something. And, and obviously when you have ideas about forming a band, that means, electric guitar, electric instruments, loud music and, in the garage or something. So I've always been very interested in all kinds of music, not just jazz or rock, but everything, and especially I remember, when I discovered the Beatles, and I started listening to the Indian influence, the world Indian, with George Harrison with the sitar and stuff, and I started listening to that. It was very eye-opening right there because I had been growing up in Mexico City. I have been listening to a lot of Spanish and music, Latin American folklore and flamenco, Spanish style guitar and stuff. So when I heard, the Beatles, mixing the rock with sitars and stuff, then I said, the sky's the limit,
Mm-hmm.
That was so my point being that, that world music in a way was always in my mind.
Yeah. What Beatles track is your go-to, or which one was the first one that you feel had an influence on you?
Well, I remember the very early Beatles, the She Loves You period and all that stuff. And I was not necessarily too interested in that probably until after after Sergeant Pepper, after the White Album, and I started listening to more of the acoustic stuff. I was happy to listen to the band with electric instruments, but I was more it was wonderful to hear him just play acoustic, and like Lennon, just singing Julia, for example, by himself, or and probably my favorite record, I would say, is probably Abbey Road, the last one, because with Here Comes the Sun, and I think that album, probably because I was a little older, when it came out, and so I really appreciate it, But I've been watching the Get Back. I just finished watching the Get Back, documentary, and man, that was just, it was. I mean, it was obvious that the end was near because George wanted, he was done. I don't know if you've seen it.
Yeah, I've got through. Actually, I'll be watching part 3 tonight.
Oh, okay.
So,
Yeah.
but the thing that amazes me with it, first from a technical standpoint, what Peter Jackson and his team did to take those films and make them look like they're not 50 years old.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah,
It's incredible to see them. To see, well, obviously the production, but just to be there, and it's very bittersweet for me because I just love them so much. To me, the Beatles are it. It's just all the, I love them all. The personalities. Probably George is my favorite for that. Same reason, and just because after the Beatles, of course, All Things Must Pass, and the records that he made. But yeah, it was a lot of fun to watch. And and the Beatles, I probably listen to them at least once or twice a week. I'm always thinking about that that stuff.
Yeah, the thing for me, and probably most people, we're watching it past tense,
Right.
so we know what the ending is.
Exactly.
But as you watch it,
the one of the greatest things for me too, Michael, was that the Beatles material was very very hard to compose, to write, I think, but for me it was very easy to learn. Just to learn the riffs, and so when I was a kid, listening to that, and just figuring out, Here Comes the Sun, for example, with that riff, the the da 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 da, and all that stuff, and then opening the possibilities of learning, so it was a different relationship, not just as a fan but also as a musician,
right?
Listening and singing along and stuff. But I was always interested in instrumental music, always. I never, I enjoyed singing, and I did a couple albums, singing. One of the my first solo record is most of it is songs that I wrote, and but I was always more interested in the instrumental part, in just trying to master the instrument, which you never do, obviously. The more you play, the more you learn that it's impossible.
You're never done
to finish learning, but that road that I chose of learning, bluegrass, and jazz, and listening to all this kind of stuff, started really just learning with the Beatles, just learning the material, and trying to at the same time trying to do my own versions of it, so that's when improvisation comes in, this, and that's how I went more into the jazz thing, because the creativity of being spontaneous at the moment, for improvisation, it's really what interested me more than the pop stuff, which you have to do it all the time, kind of like the same.
Right.
But anyway, that's just one of those things.
Yeah. Well, tell me this, if the Beatles are your biggest pop influence, who are some of your big jazz influences?
Well, in guitar, I would say, in guitar, absolutely John McLaughlin. John McLaughlin, since the very first time that I heard, his, the Mahavishnu Orchestra, and again the acoustic stuff, the acoustic little things that he had,
right?
And then all his periods, of his masterful career, obviously, and also that school of playing, which comes kind of like from Django, the Django Reinhardt, picking acoustic guitar standards, and then obviously all the Django stuff came. It was kind of like the McLaughlin technique is kind of like a progression of that, of that style, which is because I love flamenco, and another one of my favorite is Paco de Lucia. But I don't play with, I play rhythms with the hands, but I never mastered the picado like the flamencos, because I'm a jazz guy and I play with a pick, But probably John and Paco are probably my top from the influence standpoint, especially from composition and stuff. And I have to say also, that Jorge Struns, from the band Struns and Farah, which is a really good friend of mine, he was a very, very big influence too, because I started listening to him also, from the very first records that he did with Caldera, before Struns and Farah. I don't know if you're familiar with Caldera. Caldera was a fusion band, that played more of a Latin kind of, style, Latin rhythms, but being fusion. And Jorge is just a mega maestro of the guitar, which is, it's just wonderful that, that I was able to correspond with him, back in the 80s, and that we're still friends, and I spent, nights in his house just playing all night long, just, drinking tequila and just playing all night, just listening to him play, in Los Angeles. But I have a lot of favorites for many different pages of the jazz book. I love Miles Davis, he's a horn player. I love John Coltrane. I love Wes Montgomery. I very early on, Michael, I decided that I was going to listen to everything. I was one of those guys that I would go to the Sound Warehouse. Remember the Sound Warehouse? And I will buy the new Carole King, the new Johnny Mitchell, the new James Taylor, the new Jim Croce, the new John Denver, the new Crosby, Stills and Nash, the new, all the records. So, I at one point I had about 3,000 LPs in my bedroom.
You're making me feel better.
Yeah. and I would do the same with with jazz. I would do the same with classical music, because I love classical music. I will buy the new concerto by Pinchas Zuckerman, or the new whatever, or the series of Beethoven symphonies. I would have one day in my room, you could hear, I'm listening to Beethoven, and the other day I'm listening to Charlie Daniels Band, or Marshall Tucker, the Southern Road, or Allman Brothers, or just some really Ravi Shankar, so or flamenco. So I was always very interested in old styles, and then of course bluegrass. Bluegrass. When I got hit by the bluegrass bug, bitten by the bluegrass bug, like David Grisman says, which Grisman is another one of my heroes. Then that was it for me, because it was all acoustic, and I wanted to learn to play all the instruments. Guitar, bluegrass banjo, bluegrass mandolin, bluegrass fiddle, which I never, I was never able, because the fiddle is kind of a different animal, altogether. But,
yeah.
But and then I put a band together, a bluegrass band in Mexico City. Basically, just with my friends, just like, I was listening to all the jazz and rock and Beatles and this and that, but with the bluegrass, especially when I discover my favorite band, which is the Newgrass Revival, which to me is like the Beatles of bluegrass, with Sam Bush and those guys, and which are, good friends of mine still also. And, I said, man, so that means that bluegrass, I can play all kinds of stuff with bluegrass instruments. I can play rock. I can play extended jams, kind of like, which is became the jam band style now.
Right.
Because of Newgrass Revival, basically, because Newgrass was like, I remember, just hearing Sam saying that in their contract was, there was a clause that was prohibited to call him the Grateful Dead of bluegrass. But it was kind of like that, because sometimes, they would play a song for, 15 minutes just jamming, especially the first band, the first, before Bela Fleck, when Corny Johnson, with the very original Newgrass Revival, and which I was able to watch. That was like that was another really big thing for me, because when they were touring with Leon Russell.
Okay.
They made a record with Leon, and so it was Leon Russell and the Newgrass Revival, and they came to San Antonio, and Newgrass Revival opened the show for Leon. So with bluegrass instruments, but plugged in, man, like super loud. And then Leon came out, and that, for me, that changed my life right there. Of course, this was before I saw the Super Trio with Paco and John and Aldi Meola, which changed my life again when I saw that. But yeah, so yeah, the bluegrass in Mexico, man, that was crazy, because we had a lot of work. We were playing the hotels, we were playing the resorts, in all the schools, because they never seen a guy playing a banjo. I had my really long hair. This was after I did the service in Mexico. When you're 18 years old, you have to do the military service. So after that, I said, I'm not cutting my hair, and I'm not shaving. So I had like blonde hair, like down to here, with my beard and overalls. I'm playing banjos in Mexico City. It's like, who's this gringo? So, and it was very interesting. This was before I moved to the States. This was 1979, 80, 81, 82, pretty much. And then, I knew that, if I wanted to have a career, I had to make records and I had to write original music. That was basically, I mean, after all the research and all the knowledge that you acquire when you're younger, you say, in order for me to get the attention from the industry, from any kind of industry, I have to do something original, something.
Right.
And, and one of the big lessons for me, Michael, after that is, I moved to San Antonio, but then I moved to Nashville, trying to see what's going on. I mean, the guys, the Newgrass guys were there. There was a lot of, stuff going on. I was able to, to meet, all my heroes, Chet Atkins, just everybody there in Nashville in the mid 80s. But one thing that I learned in Nashville was that I had nothing to do in Nashville, because I'm a Latin guy.
Uh-huh.
There's a million guitarists out of work in Nashville that have been there for 30 years, that are great players. And what am I going to do there? What am I going to do there? I mean, it's wonderful to be there, but I was starving. I had my bride, my newly wife. We were living in a tiny apartment, and I was hawking my guitars every month just to pay their $225 rent.
The good old days.
Yeah, exactly. And it was. I mean, I learned a lot. I did some session work, and I learned, like I say, I met a lot of people and stuff. And and my friend Sam Bush told me something very important that I never forgotten, and he was, Serge, you got to find a style and stick with it. And so, because I was writing, a lot of stuff, I knew that somehow I had to bring in the flamenco and the Latin influence, because that's me. That's in my blood. I'm not a hillbilly from Kentucky. And even though one time, Roland White, I was talking to Roland White, and I said, I gave him one of my records, one of the Latin Reyes album. And he's like, so what is this stuff? I'm like, well, this is this is some of my Latin jazz stuff. And I said, Roland, I'm not from Kentucky. I'm not a bluegrass, a real bluegrass guy. And and Roland White being one of the most incredible mandolin players, from the early Country Gazette and the Kentucky Colonels with his brother Clarence White and stuff. And he looked at me and said, "You know what, man? Neither I'm from Maine." So I guess you can be from anywhere, but I knew that I had to abandon Nashville, and I had to find a way to record my stuff and to find somebody to play with, to put a little combo together. And that's basically from the music that I wrote in Nashville and that I the demos that I made over there. Moving back to San Antonio, that's how I hooked up with Joe Reyes, and that's when when we started the collaboration. And it was incredible after being in Nashville. I mean, who'd have thunk it that I was going to get a record deal in LA? Because Higher Octave was in Malibu.
Mm-hmm.
So after the first recordings and the first things that we put together ourselves, we paid for it. The first album, the Two Guitars, One Passion, and then the second one, Guitarras Hermanas. We started sending them to different places. It was obviously this was before. This was when you really needed to have talent and a little budget, to get, there was no email, there was no YouTube, right. There was nothing. This was just like, just like the good old days, it was like, okay, if you're going to get a record deal, well, you better have something to offer, not just to the audience, but to the labels, because right. they gotta make money, So somehow, I know I'm going a little long here, but somehow one of my albums ended up in the hands of another really good friend of mine, which is still the president of the Flamenco Society of San Jose, California. His name is Eddie Diaz, and somehow they started playing that record, the Guitarras Hermanas album, in San Francisco, in KKSF, the station there. And everybody loved it, and nobody could buy it. It was nowhere because I was just selling them from the back of my truck in San Antonio. There was not, we had nothing, no distribution, nothing. It was just an independent project. And that's how we got, the Higher Octave contact, because KKSF, it's like, hey man, what's going on? These guys, everybody loves them in the Bay Area, and nobody can find the records. And that's how we got the connection from Higher Octave. I think we got a letter first, and then I called them, and I talked to one of the owners, the president, Dan Celine, and he said, "So what do you want, Sergio?" Asking basically what, do you want like a licensing deal, or do you want, I said, I want a record deal. That's what I want, He's like, well, do you mind selling your masters? I'm like, I don't mind, show me the money. So that's when we signed for 4 albums, but the best part, Michael, was that 2 of them were already made, because the Two Guitars, One Passion, right, and Guitarras Hermanas, we had already done them. So all we did was, Higher Octave got them, and they remastered them, and they put a new package. They basically new cover, new everything, and right, now the records were going to be everywhere. Just distribution all over the world, and then everything changed for us. Obviously, this was 1993. After that, and that was pretty much the beginning of our Higher Octave years, which were 6 albums.
Yeah, the beginning of the Higher Octave years and the end of selling CDs out of your trunk.
Well, yeah, it was a very great team that Higher Octave had, because, well, first of all, they had a budget. They had they had deep pockets for marketing, and then we did a lot of a few tours with different Higher Octave artists, like Craig Chaquizo from the old Jefferson, right? Airplane. He had he was one of the artists, so we toured with him. We toured with him and his band, just all over the basically, just from Southern California to the Bay Area, just all around there. And that was great because we did, the Catalina Island Festival, what you have like, 10,000 people in that ballroom and then we sell, thousands. I mean, just right there, I remember just the guy saying, you guys just passed the 5,000 CDs just on the weekend.
Wow.
What? Really? I mean, because it's a 3-day event, and and there was no downloads, there was nothing. I mean, if you like the record, you like one song of the record, you got to buy the whole record.
Right.
You know what I mean? So obviously, that meant that it was a good business for the label, and we started getting some some notoriety from the guitar magazines, and from the different guitar organizations and stuff, which to me was the most important thing. Just to how can I get into the guitar world with my original stuff, which is the hardest thing. You got to find a formula, or you got to find something. But then again, Michael, it's also, there's a lot of pressure because you have a contract and you cannot make the same record over and over. So you have to write, you have to have time to write music, to vary it and to come up with new ideas and new production ideas, for example, okay, now there's going to, after those 2 albums, the third one, Exotico, we said, well, how about if we start inviting guests, and so on that record, that's the first one where we had pianos and sax and violin, just different stuff. So anyway, it just went through a great period before the internet just really hit, because then, as everything just collapsed.
Right. Well, I'll tell you, before we get too far down the road with the records, you mentioned about playing the festivals and big shows. What are some of those shows that stick out in your mind? 'Cause I mean, you played with some pretty high profile folks.
Yeah, probably the biggest one that I can remember was playing in Mexico City at the Palace of Fine Arts. The Palace of Fine Arts in Mexico City is like Carnegie Hall. It's one of, that's what Pavarotti, used to sing, or Paco de Lucia. And then, also, this was the Palace of Fine Arts they have a series every year of season. For example, they have, the Renaissance, or they have the classic, the masters, like, Mozart and whatever, all that. And then they have jazz expressions. Okay. And that's where we played on the jazz expressions, which on the same concert, on the same series, I think they had, Chick Corea and Dave Brubeck Quartet, and, stuff like that, which is, really high profile. So that was very interesting because for me, this is my city, Mexico City, and I'm going to play at the Palace of Fine Arts. When I told my folks, they were like, what? You're going to play at the Palace of Fine Arts? And so that was incredible, that, for me, and just being so proud to be there, just to see and bringing my guys, from Texas, and just over there to say, look, you want to see where the gig is, if you just Google the Palace of Fine Arts and you see the picture, it's just like this huge mausoleum, it looks like the Taj Mahal kind of, just like incredible place. Also playing the festivals here in San Antonio, after having, the success, we were like the band of the year every year, the Latin band, the guitar duo of the year, here. So playing during that time where the records were selling really well, and having, packed houses in San Antonio, packed festivals, with all these people, that's a lot of fun. And obviously, sharing the stage with, with a lot of incredible, Wayne Shorter, Stanley Clark, Larry Carlton, and we did a lot. We did a few shows also with Strunz and Farah, also the other duo, which is my friends, my master heroes, a big, huge, especially Jorge, huge. influences. And so it was very, a lot of fun to, to play, with them, in Austin and here in San Antonio. And the Bay Area. I mean, everything, every memory has, good. Every show has good and bad memories. Just craziness, you know what I mean. It's like Spinal Tap. It's just like, you're late for the show, and suddenly, one of the screws on my glasses fell, and my glasses are like this, and we're on the way to the venue. This was in one of the vineyards in the Bay Area, and I'm like on my way, and I'm like, man, we got to stop at like a Walgreens so I can get one of those little screws because my glasses, stuff like that, man, just crazy. But
it's always something.
Yeah, it's always something. And being able to be backstage with like with John McLaughlin and talking to him and giving him my albums and just telling him how much of a big influence he's been, or being with Paco. In fact, I was with Paco the November before he passed. He passed in February or March or something like that, and I remember just just looking at him very tired, very, and him saying, I'm done touring, basically. I'm just, the road is very hard, as it's just but now, with this pandemic, man, I've been writing music. I've been, like especially, earlier this year and last year and, and the year before, just like, just staying home and, writing music and trying to stay active, but, with no shows, nothing. This last November, I did a couple of shows, and that was it. That there hasn't been anything. And but the good thing, Michael, is that now I have all this new music, and even though there were no shows, as I put out 2 records.
Yep.
Last year.
Exactly. I'll tell you what. Why don't we talk about those 2? Which one do you want to talk about first?
One was the last. Okay. The very last year that Latin Reyes was together. Before I knew that we were going to be, that we were going to split, I had an idea to make a DVD. I said, we should, we have 7 albums. By that time, after the Higher Octave contract ended, with 6 records, we took a little break, but then we came back and we did, the last one, studio one, Latin Reyes, and but then I said, now we got to put up, we got to have some, we got to put together a DVD with like our story, with a lot of interviews, with different people, with a lot of the, some footage that the fans, want to hear, like, influences and this and that, and then interview maybe some of the people that, that helped us launch our career, like the program director here in San Antonio, David Munoz, and then, the recording engineers that, we use and stuff. So we put it all together, and we did, 10, actually it was like 11 or 12 shows, and it was done here in my studio where I am right now, and it was just the duo. So basically we just put, there's a lot of this footage is already on YouTube. The DVD never came out, obviously, because we split up. But that with YouTube, it's I put a lot of the best tracks over there. So basically, we just brought all our guitars here in the studio, just put them all on stands, and then we played every song with different guitars, every tune. And but since it never came out, and I was going to put out the video on YouTube, the videos, I talked to one of my engineer friends. I said, how about if we just like rescue all the audio of those sessions and put a record together? So that's basically what we did. Just all those tracks, we converted them to WAV files, and he did a little remastering. This is my friend Leo Papa, which is a really good friend of mine, great engineer that I've done, I mean, he's mastered a lot of my solo stuff. He mastered live in San Antonio. He mastered acoustic. I did it in his studio up in Detroit when he was there. Now he's down here in Texas. anyway, I've done a lot of stuff with him, and so he put it, he basically cleaned it up, and I said, okay, let's put it, I'm just gonna put it out, and then I'm just gonna call it Lone Star Guitars, because it's, we're in the Lone Star State.
Mm-hmm.
It's recorded in Texas, and this is where the band started and stuff. And so that's out there. It's obviously it's on all the platforms. It's for sale, of course, on Amazon and stuff. But you can listen, stream it, and on YouTube or Pandora, Spotify, everywhere. So that was the first one. And then I had other tracks from other sessions that also Leo put mastered, and that's what became Wildwood. And that one was, there's some session, actually, it's interesting because some of those sessions were done in Nashville before Latin Reyes.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So, and then some newer stuff that I recorded here, and it's all original, all my original stuff. Obviously both albums is all, are, well, the Latin Reyes is, both Latin Reyes compositions, but the new one it's all mine. And so, yeah, so those are the two projects that we put, that I put out on my Fusion Acoustica label. And like I said, now I have all this new music that I'm planning to record next year.
Mm-hmm.
It's been very hard, man. It's been very hard to it's been very hard trying to count with musicians, because everybody's, busy trying to survive.
Right.
So it's just very hard to get them to get interested in a project and practice and learn the stuff and all that, because they just don't have the time. So I've been having problems with that. I had put together in 2019, I had put together an idea of, I think I told you about that, of a guitar trio, which was going to be the San Antonio Guitar Trio. But with the pandemic and all that stuff, that just, we were ready to record, but but a lot of that material is the new stuff that I'm going to record now.
Okay. Well, I'll tell you, going back to Lone Star Guitars.
Yeah.
Yeah. In our conversation here, you've mentioned John and Paco, and on that, you've got Waltz for John and Paco.
That's right.
Yeah. Tell us about that track.
Well, there's a riff that John, I have my guitar here, that they use a lot, which is this. Okay. And when you see them play, John uses that a lot. And so that riff, was always in my mind, trying to, became kind of like the basis of that tune. Mm-hmm. So that's why I said, I'm going to do it in 3/4, in waltz time, just like, and I'm going to just, use that riff as part of the composition, and just a tribute to John and Paco, which are my two favorite guitarists, really.
Yeah.
So yeah, that was it.
Yeah. Another track on Lone Star Guitars that stands out for me is Street Dog Blues.
Okay.
Now that one, you guys did stuff a little bit differently, didn't you?
Yeah. Well, like I said, I play mandolin, and I had I have one of those rhizophonic, dobro style mandolins, like a national style. It's made by a company called Republic, I believe, here in Texas. And so I had just gotten that, I have different acoustic mandolins, but that one, that particular tune, it was just kind of a jam. And Reyes had a national guitar, an actual,
Mm-hmm.
like a rhizophonic guitar. So just for fun, at the end of the session, we looked around. I said, okay, which instruments we haven't used, and so I said, how about this? And that was it. So that was basically an idea that I had, but we had never played it before.
Mm-hmm.
Not even rehearsed it or anything. We just like, okay, just follow me. And so I played it with a slide, and stuff. Yeah, that's like totally. If you hear that and you say, "What? That's Latin Reyes?" What do you mean? I mean, I've used mandolins, various mandolins throughout, all the catalog. Throughout my career. There's mandolins. In fact, I made a record just called Guitars and Mandolins, which
Yep.
is all folk stuff, bluegrass style, and I play all the instruments there. I play guitars and mandolins there. So, but yeah, that was kind of like a first one.
Yeah, well, tell you what. Yeah, since you mentioned guitars and mandolins, which was what 2012, I think when you put that one out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. The thing that intrigues me with your music, Sergio, is you can hear the influences. So if you listen to Guitars and Mandolins, the album you did before that was Sunburst.
Right.
Yeah. So now on Sunburst, you've got the Bexar County Special, which is like a country jam, but yeah, you've got a clarinet as the soloist in it.
That's right.
How did you decide to do that?
Well, the Sunburst project was one that I wanted to play electric guitar. When I turned 50 years old, I said I'm gonna buy me a guitar that I've never had before, and I'm gonna get something outrageous because it's my 50th birthday, and I'm just gonna get something. So I decided to buy a Gibson L5 West Montgomery model, which I stupidly sold years later, and I regret it now. And now that guitar is worth probably like $15,000, or I don't know how much. But they're impossible to make, impossible to find, because it was a custom from the custom historic Gibson plant that was in Memphis, which I don't think is longer there. Anyway, so I bought that guitar and I said, man, I'm just gonna write music for this guitar, for this project. I've used electric guitars before. I believe I used an electric guitar on World Jazz and different things, but this one was going to be exclusively electric guitar. And jazz guitar, big fat jazz box, so the Gibson L5 was the one. And so the concept was, I'm going to play, I didn't want to have a keyboard, so it's bass, drums, and I play all the rhythm guitars also. And then as another soloist, I decided to have a different horn on every song. And so I have, tenor sax, flutes, clarinet, alto sax, soprano. Anyway, just different, from different players, different friends of mine from here. And this particular track, my friend Pierre Poré, which is from New Orleans, and he had just come to San Antonio because of Katrina. He had just moved here. And I met him and I said, man, I have this perfect track for you. He plays mainly alto sax, I believe. And he's a wonderful singer. But he plays clarinet too. So that's why, I was like, man, we got to do that. He's kind of like, Chet Atkins and Boots Randolph or something. Very, very Nashville kind of, electric thing. And that's just basically a riff, a tune that I used to play just like to warm up, really kind of. I still kind of do that. But then, hey, I live in Bear County. Bear County is here, so the Bear County Special was born.
Yeah. Well, you mentioned Wes Montgomery. You had another track in there, which was a nod to him, West Side.
That's right. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, Wes was the master of octaves. Octaves, I basically, when you have, or like this. So, obviously, an electric guitar is kind of a different tone. You have sustain and stuff. This is a flamenco guitar, so even though I can play octaves on this, but on that one, yeah, that was kind of an idea that I had to just play the melody with octaves, pa pa pa, if you hear it, and so West Side, instead of West Side, it's West Side. So yeah, it's like a tribute to West, one of the kings of jazz guitar, probably. If you ask, everybody, Pat Metheny, George Benson, Mike Stern, all those guys, they would tell you that Wes is the king. I mean, Wes, and funny because Wes, he played with his thumbs, with his thumb. Basically, he never touched the pick. He didn't play with a pick. And most everybody, all the jazz players play with a pick, but Wes didn't. And he was, if you see him, he had this huge thumb, and obviously he didn't need a pick, but it's just a beautiful tone. Yeah. And that that L5 that I had was the Wes Montgomery model. So it's just the difference between just the regular L5 and the Wes Montgomery is that the Wes Montgomery has just one pickup as opposed to two pickups. I miss that guitar so much, man. I gotta find one. Find another one. Yeah.
Start that search.
But I mean, it's I'm mainly an acoustic player. Even though I love, I play. I have a Strat and I have a Telecaster and I have a Les Paul. I played with some friends here in town. Where they invite me to sit in and play a little country or blues or stuff. But I write on acoustic. I love electric guitar, but I'm an acoustic guy. I'm an acoustic guitarist.
Tell me this, Sergio. You mentioned you playing different types of things with different folks.
Yeah.
What was a gig where you found yourself playing either instruments or music that you never thought that you would be in that situation playing?
Oh man. Well, because I started playing in bands with electric instruments, I'm very familiar with with plugging in and I'm playing loud, and so I don't think that would be. It would probably be more like playing, like for example, like with Jorge Struns, just him and I, in his house years ago, and me suddenly just thinking, why, how lucky can I be that I'm just, here playing with this master that I listen to, to him in my bedroom and just, would be like thinking, man, if I could ever, shake his hand, or something. Or, like at one point, Birelli, like, are you familiar with Birelli, this French guitarist? He was here in town, and also, another friend of mine, he brought him, we were playing the same festival, and he came backstage, and I met him, and we jammed backstage also. And I'm like, they're jamming with Birelli. Obviously, this is before cell phones, before, so there's no pictures of nothing, right. All this that I'm telling you, and, or in Nashville also, in Nashville, talking to Chet Atkins, in fact, we went to lunch, and then we went to a music store, and I'm with Chet, just, this Mexican guy, in Nashville with Chet Atkins, I'm just like unbelievable. So it's been more, or be with Paco de Lucia, obviously, it was more that than any kind of like jamming or playing situation, because most of those I feel very lucky that I play with a lot of people and that I have the opportunity to play in all these different venues with different players. But it's more like the private stuff that suddenly you're like trying to pinch yourself, like, is this real? Am I here? Because we're all human, but you idolize, it's like watching George Harrison on that documentary. I wish I met him. I wish like I'd shake his hand or be with him. But when you see him in the documentary, he's just another guy, just there, that wants out of the band. He doesn't want to be there anymore. He wants to fly.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, I'll tell you, you had mentioned before the World Jazz album.
Yeah.
And that album, you guys were nominated for a Latin Grammy Award for Best Instrumental Pop Album.
That's right.
So what was that like when you get notified that you've been nominated for a Grammy?
Well, this was the one of the issues with that in that era was that the label was going to sell to Virgin Records. Okay, so we had completed 4 albums, the last one being Riverwalk, and then I decided to make a Christmas album when we were in negotiations between contracts. So I told the label, I said, well, we have all this Christmas music, and I'm going to make a record, whether you like it or not, because right now I'm not under contract. So until we've signed the new contract, which we did for another 4 albums, I'm going to make this record. And then obviously we signed for the 4 albums. So they love the Christmas record in Navidad, which is one of our top sellers, and then we said, okay, we're going to do the next album, which was World Jazz. Now, by that time, I heard that the label was selling, that the owners were going to stay kind of like just as advisors for the new ownership, and the new ownership was Virgin. So basically, Virgin bought like 50 labels or something. I mean, they bought Narada, they bought Higher Octave, they bought up all these independent labels. And I knew, Michael, I smelled a rat. I knew that they were going to get rid of all the artists that were not like mega sellers. So I thought, man, this is it. Probably this is going to be it. And then 9/11 happened and all that stuff. And then the owner, well, the ex-owner, the guy that was still there that had hired me, he told me, you know what, man, we're going to take a break right now. We don't know what's going to happen. So if you want out, you're out. Because I said, okay, I mean, I'm ready to make another record. This was after World Jazz and after the nomination. I was like, I'm ready. So, I mean, we have a contract for 4, albums. I'm ready. When am I going to do the next one? Basically, are you going to send me the advance that we already negotiated for the next one? Because I'm running out of money. But anyway, so in a way, I knew that that was my Abbey Road, that was it. That was going to be it. I kind of knew. So I said, okay, now I'm going to make the record that I've always wanted to make with all these guests and all these people, Indian guys with, Oliver Rajamani on tablas and, and me, anyway, so that was it. And then, we got the nomination, and the call was from, my product manager. And he just told me, he sent me an email, by then we had email, and he sent me an email. He just said, you should be very proud of yourself. Congratulations. And I'm like, what happened? I didn't know.
Why should I be proud?
Yeah, I mean, I'm already proud of myself, but what did I do so basically that was it. And then I got a letter from the Recording Academy, just basically, saying, that we have been nominated and stuff. And, it's just something that you always dream about, not necessarily because of the prize itself, but just being nominated by for a Grammy. It's like if I was an actor and I'm nominated for an Oscar, it's like, what? It's like, really? Even if you don't win, which we didn't win, but we were nominated and stuff, and calling my folks and my wife and everybody just very excited about that. And unfortunately, man, the ceremony was on 9/11. So in Los Angeles. So we're all excited. We went to the night before. Every night before the Grammys, there's a Person of the Year banquet at whatever hotel somewhere. This one was at the Beverly Hills Hotel. So I'm there with my wife and my folks and my sister. When right in the limo. This is September 10th. Okay, right in the limo from the hotel from the hotel to the banquet at the other hotel, with everybody there, just Celia Cruz, all these Latin stars, that we got to hang out with and stuff. And then waiting for the next day, just to see, just to go to the, I believe it was the American Airlines Arena or something like that. And I just couldn't sleep. I just couldn't sleep the night before. We were just there. And obviously, we had drank a little too much, the night before, obviously.
That never happens.
Yeah, well, and getting ready for the next day, just to, and so I believe it was like, now this is Los Angeles time, this is LA. So about 6 a.m. or 7, I just told my wife, you know what, can I turn on the TV? She's like, oh yeah, go ahead. So I turned on the TV, and I'm kind of like, just waking up, with the lights out and just changing the channels, and I see the same scene on every channel, and it looked like, to me, it looked like a highway with flames, but no, it was the tower with flames.
Mm-hmm.
Because this is LA time, so by that time it was, in New York, it was what, 9 o'clock already.
Mm-hmm.
So everything had happened already. And then, then realized what happened. And then sure enough, I got the call probably from one of the higher up people, just say, hey man, the Grammys have been canceled. And you're stuck in LA because there's no flights out.
Right.
And we had rented a van, luckily we had rented a van. And this was Tuesday, Wednesday. And I had a show. I have the Jazz Festival Friday and Saturday in San Antonio. So I'm like, what am I going to do? I mean, is the festival still on or not, or what? So anyway, obviously, when we got dressed, cleaned up and went downstairs to the lobby, and we started talking, there was, everybody there at the lobby, all the artists and everybody that was there, and a lot of pilots and stewardesses and all that, just like, we don't know when the air is going to open again. Anyway, it was bittersweet, because it had happened on that particular day, so we never went to the ceremony. There was no Grammys, there was nothing. And the rest is history, as you know. And then we just drove back from LA to San Antonio. We just had to drive back.
Mm-hmm.
And we made the fest. Yeah, we arrived, and we played the festival, and and that was it. So there was, all I have is just my my memories from my Grammy nomination certificate and my medal. But I wanted to go there. We wanted to be there, obviously, and maybe it'll happen sometime. Sometime again. Who knows?
Yeah, exactly. Well, I'll tell you what, I got to ask you, because I know the viewers are going to be wondering, who were some of those people in the photos on the wall behind you?
Oh, my heroes. Well, let's see. I have pictures with John McLaughlin, up there. I have, some. These are most of these are promo photos that some of them that I got them from, the artist direct. That's one from Chris Hillman. Chris, from the Birds.
Chris has been on the show twice.
Yeah, he's a really good friend of mine. We talk all the time. We're mandolin buddies. We met because I sold him a mandolin, online through the Mandolin Cafe, and then he's a big fan of my music, of course. To me, Chris is like one of the Beatles, American Beatles. Just from what he is. So I have a picture, of him, with him, and most of it, it's like, I have Newgrass Revival over here. I have a picture of Robert Johnson. I have a picture of Django, the Super Trio down there. Mm-hmm. A lot of them are just through my travels. I enjoy going to these different, different stores where they have, memorabilia and stuff like that. There used to be a very big one in Vegas, that where I find some stuff, and then there was another one in Paris that we used to go there when Paris had the biggest Virgin store, back in the 90s. And so, going there, and then next to there was, this great store where they have all these pictures from most of these photos, these 8x10 glossies that they put on the promo packages, as you know. Right. Now it's the EPKs, now I don't think that, I have some pictures myself, but nobody asked me for an actual physical picture anymore. It's all like through email, Right. And this room is, if you want to, I can just take you for a ride in it. This is my studio. This is where This is where I practice. This is where I have you can see here, the this is the Grammy thing, and this is for one of my albums that won the hi-fi guitar album of the year for the hi-fi um you know um this is a it's a musician as entertainment that is just for hi-fi.
Right.
Here's my the medal for the Grammy. And then I have a lot of different from the local uh places here. Anyway, this is the wall of shame. My wall of shame. And then I'm a very big Dallas Cowboys fan. I love football, and so I have a collection of just different cowboy stuff. I have pictures, signed pictures by my heroes, Troy Aikman and Tony Dorsett, and I have signed balls, footballs. And anyway, I mean, this is where I work. This is kind of like my man cave, but I've made records here. This is where the Lone Star Guitars was made.
Okay.
Right here, was recorded. And I don't have a lot of guitars here because sometimes the weather is just too cold or too hot. So, but I have my Conde, my flamenco Conde here, which is my current guitar, built by Mariano Conde in Madrid, which is basically my baby. This is my new one. I go to Spain every year. We enjoy going to Spain, and I love. I'm a guitar guy, man. I go to the guitar shops, to the guitarreros, and I've been very fortunate that I've commissioned many instruments, just custom made for me throughout the years. And so this one, the legendary Conde, House of Conde, that started in Madrid in 1915, and had all these different 3 generations now. So this was built by one of the sons of one of the original guys, Mariano Conde, which is a good friend, and it's a masterful luthier. I mean, he's just a genius. All his guitars are just incredible. But the beautiful part of commissioning one is that you can ask for specific measurements on the neck, specific qualities that only you can notice, as opposed to just going to a music store and just getting a guitar off the rack, which there's nothing wrong with that. But when you custom made, you can pick and choose from the color and the woods but mainly the measurements for for your hands and the the scale length and just different things that when you're sitting in a studio for 3 hours or on stage and you're playing the instrument for a long period of time, it's not as hard as with other instruments that you kind of have to adjust to. Like I have steel string guitars. I have a couple beautiful Martin guitars, but on one of them I have an Eric Clapton model that is a great guitar, but the neck is just too fat for me. It sounds great, but I wish it had a different neck. So anyway, little things like that. But with these guitars, like I said, this is the last one that I commit. In fact, this one, Michael, this one was my 60th birthday present a couple years ago.
Yeah.
So I said, now I'm going to do for my 60th birthday. Well, I'm going to order a guitar from Mariano Conde, which was just, again, being there with Mariano in his shop in Madrid was just like a dream that I'd never thought, and then it's the waiting game, because you go there and they got to put together. In fact, I don't know if you've seen it, but there's a video on one of my YouTube channel, which is basically the construction of my guitar. Yeah, a visit to Mariano Conde in Madrid, and from there you can see all the stages of not cutting the wood, but basically from the raw wood, to putting together the box and finishing it, and then waiting 6 or 7 months for them to ship it to San Antonio, and me just going like, oh, where's my guitar, and opening the case. And anyway, it's just I don't know, it's just like a beautiful experience that for somebody that is as crazy about guitar as me, that is just like a dream. I mean, it's great to go to a store and buy a guitar and play it and stuff, but it's very different, when you commission one from a guy that just makes it with his hands. I mean, he's got some machines there, but it's not a factory. It's just the one guy. In fact, it's a 2-person operation. Mariano father and Mariano Jr., they both, they are the shop. But that's it, man. Just them two, and they build, I don't know how many guitars a year, and they're expensive instruments, obviously, because they're handmade. But there's, I mean, these are concert guitars. These are like, it's like the finest of the finest. Just like sweating there, just cutting, sanding wood and all that. And I mean, the Condes, Mariano is my favorite, my current favorite. But there's a lot of great luthiers, in here. I mean, obviously in Spain for flamenco guitars, but also here in the States, there's a lot of wonderful. I mean, I'm just a guitar nut, man. I just wish I had one of each, of every guitar, because I just love them so much. I just love. I just in fact, I can tell you that I love the guitar more than the music. You know what I mean? I mean, I'm more in love with the instrument than the actual music.
Well, the like the one you were just showing, I mean, that's a piece of art as well as being an instrument.
Yeah, and also, with these instruments, the more you play them, they age. And so, I mean, I have other guitar. I had, the very first guitar that I commissioned was when we signed the contract with Higher Octave, and that's why the title of Guitarras Hermanas, which is sister guitars. This were guitars that we ordered from Pedro Maldonado in Malaga, and we were like, what are we gonna do? I mean, we got this advance money, and I think we both bought new cars. Well, not brand new cars, but new vehicles. And then I said, man, let's order some guitars, some custom guitars. I mean, just the difference of, obviously, expensive instruments, but I mean, I'm glad I did it. This is from Pedro Maldonado, which is deceased now. And this was actually a guitar that I wanted because Jorge Struns had one. Jorge had a Maldonado cutaway. The cutaway is this part. That now, it's very easy to find. They're very easy to find cutaway flamenco guitars, but back then there was no flamenco cutaways. Nobody. I mean, there were very few actual flamenco Spanish luthiers that were making them, and Maldonado was one of them. And so I called him and I said, I just we want to commission 2 guitars. So so that was the first one that I commissioned from Maldonado after many more orders. But that one was the only one I kept. That was the original guitar, and I still have that one, and it's in all my records. And it's a beautiful guitar. But one thing that guitar has that this, or better said, one thing that this guitar has that the other one doesn't have, is that the other one, the Maldonado, has a longer scale, and this one has a little shorter scale, which is more comfortable for me. So I don't play that other one anymore that much. I play this one because the scale is just more of a standard shorter one. Anyway, man, all these little details are just for geeks like me. For people who say, why do you have multiple guitars? Well, they're all different,
Right.
Different flavors.
Exactly.
And some of them are, good for some things and better, for, I mean, I think that all instruments, there's the limits are in the player, the limitations are within you. But it's great to have, an instrument that, that you discover and you keep playing and you grow, and that inspires you to write. That's basically it. Just every guitar has, like my friend Henry Gross says. I'm saying, Henry, why do you have all these Gibson B25s and it's like everyone is different, man. Everyone inspired me to write different material,
Mm-hmm.
And it's true. It's really true.
Yeah, they've all got their own personality.
They're all like girlfriends, they're all like girlfriends. But
I don't know if I would use
wife.
that. Use that description.
Yeah, you only have one wife. The one, like they asked me, well, what if they say you got to sell all your guitars, you got to keep just one? Well, I know which one it is, but I still want to have all the other ones, because they're all great, So, but anyway, yeah, I mean, they always say, how many more guitars you need? Well, just one more. Every time it's one more, just one more.
Oh man. Well, tell you what, Sergio, that's probably a good point to wrap this thing up. Is there anything that we didn't get to cover?
Just to thank you so much, man, and congratulations too for your career, your channel, all the beautiful stories and all the beautiful hidden personalities that a lot of your guests that bring, because of you inviting them. That is so nice to hear, like I saw the ones with Chris Hillman, and anyway, I've seen most of the stuff that you've done, and so yeah, definitely congratulations. It's a great contribution. I love that we can do this remotely, and and hopefully we this is just one more before the next one, because I definitely would like to when the new projects are done, I'll send them to you, so we can also talk about that, and just to thank you and to wish you the best for the new year, and hopefully we can meet someday in person.
That would be great. So, and thank you for the kind words. I truly appreciate it, Sergio.
You're welcome.
All right. Well, tell you what, on that note, friends, we are going to wrap this one up. I want to thank you for watching. Sergio, thank you for being here.
Thank you for inviting me.
Anytime. All right, everybody, have a good night.
This has been Music Night at the Majestic with Michael Boswell. If you enjoyed this edition of Music Night at the Majestic, follow us on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, Instagram, and at musicnight.net. Music Night at the Majestic is a copyright production of Starliner Media. Any use of the accounts and descriptions of this program, its audio or visual content, without the express written consent of Starliner Media is prohibited. Thank you for joining us this evening. We'll see you next time for Music Night at the Majestic. This is your announcer speaking. Starliner Media.